What up, monster trolleys?
Good evening, ghouls and ghoulettes. I just wanted to take a few moments to tell you all how much we appreciate you being here with us and just want you all to know that we love you. We want to make sure we give you the best experience possible with all correct information, so please stick with us as we learn to navigate through any hiccups in the best way we possibly can. We do have an email address now as well, so please reach out to us with any case recommendations at contactus@cheeseforthoughtpodcast.com. And if you have a preference as to who narrates and researches your case, please include that in the email. And as always, if you haven't already, please like and follow us on TikTok and Facebook at Cheese for Thought Podcast. And again, don't forget to email your case suggestions to contactus@cheeseforthoughtpodcast.com. This is Maggie,
Drew,
And Ariel.
and you're listening to Cheese for Thought Podcast. Hello and welcome to Creep Street Ghoulies. I did misspeak a handful of times in last week's episode and wanted to correct myself real quick. Back in 1982, the extra strength Tylenol that was being altered by the mad poisoner was the capsule form, not the tablet like I originally said. And over-the-counter Tylenol did come in tablets, capsules, and liquid back then. Also, all formations came in a box, but the boxes weren't glued shut like they are now. They came in a box that folds over, just like the box that holds your deck of cards. I also had said 2 victims held on for 2 days, and it was truly only the one victim, Teresa Janus. And lastly, the lot number stamped on the bottles of the Tylenol was MC2880. I missed the second 8 in our recording last week. I just wanted to correct myself on all of this information before we continue talking about this case. And then I remember Ariel was curious to know how police officers knew to barge into Paula's apartment, and I did find an answer for her on that one. Paula's best friend, Jean Levengood, who was also a flight attendant, said she was flipping through the stack of everyone's paychecks because at that point in time, employees' paychecks were printed out for employees to come in and pick them up on payday. Like, that's how ours was too when we first started working.
Yeah, that's how mine was too. When I worked at McDonald's, it was like you had to go in to get your pay stub. They didn't have direct deposit.
Right.
Like you had to go in and actually physically get it and then go cash it.
Right. When Jean was flipping through the stack looking for her paycheck, she came across Paula's still in the stack and thought it was strange she hadn't picked it up yet. So she went to the crew desk and stated how odd it was that Paula hadn't picked up her paycheck yet, and that's when they told Jean that Paula was a no-show the day prior. So Jean called Paula's sister, Carol, and explained how Paula missed her flight and knew in her gut something was wrong. So Jean and Paula's sister met up with each other where Jean and Paula lived and took the spare key they had upstairs to Paula's and unlocked the door to see Paula's body lying on the floor. So they must have lived in the same place.
Okay.
Carol and Jean were both so stunned they didn't know if someone was still in the apartment with Paula or how long she'd been dead. So they didn't go inside. They instead went down to Jean's apartment and called 911. So Paula wouldn't have been found if Jean hadn't have spoken up that day. Like, she would have been found way later, probably.
Okay.
All right, so when we left off last week, Johnson & Johnson had just read the ransom letter that held all of America hostage. And that letter named a bank and an account number to wire $1 million to. But I did not mention that this letter also contained a partial fingerprint from the writer himself. And the stamp on the envelope had a serial number that traced back to a company. That company was Lakeside Travel, a company that no longer existed. Investigators found out rather quickly who the owner of this company was, and his name was Frederick Miller McCahey. When authorities asked Frederick who he thought would write a letter such as this, and who also had access to his Pitney Bowes postage meter and bank account number, he answered rather quickly. James and Leanne Lewis. When authorities asked Frederick why he thought James and Leanne would do this to him, he stated Leanne Lewis was a temporary employee at Lakeside Travel before it went out of business, and she was irate because her last paycheck bounced after the travel agency had closed. James Lewis, her husband, was even more irate, which led to a series of incidents that weren't mentioned. I'd be curious to know what all happened there.
So they book travel.
Yeah, I would imagine like a travel agency.
Yeah, like vacations for people, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would imagine. But before we continue from here, I want to give you a backstory as to who James was and a murder that happened prior to the Chicago Tylenol murders that James was tried and released for. This is going to be a lot of information thrown at you all at once, so please ask me any questions as soon as you have them, Drew and Mario. Because this was a lot for even me to put together. I spent so many hours getting this story straight.
Guilty, he did it.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
We're going to talk about two suspects that were like the most biggest ones. There was another one, but he was ruled out rather quickly. So James Lewis was born under the name of Theodore Elmer Wilson in Memphis, Tennessee in 1946 and had an incredibly rough childhood. When he was just 2 years old, his father abandoned his mother to fend for herself and her 3 children. His mother later abandoned him too, with his 2 siblings at a hotel in Missouri.
Jesus.
So
I don't understand how people do that.
I
Like,
know.
just leave their, like, it's just too hard, I'm leaving my kids. Like, I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't care who you are, I don't agree with that at all. I don't feel sorry for the situation you're in. I don't feel it. Like, you just don't leave your kids. That's fucked up.
I agree.
I could never imagine just leaving our child. No matter how hard it gets.
Yeah.
I could just leave them. Like, I would
Never.
just figure it out.
I couldn't even fathom thinking about it. Social workers split up the siblings, which was a traumatic experience for Theodore. The state sent Theodore to live with his new parents in another town, and that is when he was renamed James by his new parents.
That's
I know, it's like it's not a
dog.
Well,
Well, I don't like your name, so we're going to change
right,
it.
like
And
he's not a
it's not like he was a
dog.
baby
Yeah.
either. So it's like you already knew his name.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
don't,
Bizarre.
that's kind of strange, yeah.
That's bizarre.
This is going to rename you.
I know, isn't that wild? His adoptive mother, Charlotte Lewis, allegedly tried to return him to the adoption agency because she and his adoptive father felt he was a burden and impossible to care for.
Nice.
When James was 12, his adoptive father died from either a stroke or a heart attack. I saw it listed as both interchangeably in all my sources. So for the second time in his life, he lost another father figure. Charlotte was now a single mother with an overreactive son in a home that didn't have plumbing or electricity. Charlotte did her best considering the circumstances. James was very well behaved at school, but when they were at home alone together, Charlotte feared him. When James was 19, he attempted to take his own life after attacking his adopted mother with an axe and was committed to Missouri State Mental Hospital.
Jeez.
That was a wild twist there.
It's gonna get
Went from 0 to 100.
It's gonna get worse. When he was inpatient there, Lewis told the other patients and caretakers that his violent outburst and suicidal attempt was an elaborate ploy created by the family so he could avoid the Vietnam draft. Sometime after being released from this facility, he started college. There he met Leanne Miller, his now wife. The two were a perfect match. They enjoyed talking amongst each other about technology and politics. Leanne was infatuated with his soft-spoken intelligence, but there was one big difference between the two. Leanne was very hardworking, and she was the one that kept them afloat financially, while James was still an unpredictable and angry individual who had been abandoned in a motel. He was unstable and often let his emotions take over any successes in his life.
Yeah, watch out. He might come at you with an axe.
For real. At work, James would lash out at his bosses and had trouble keeping his resentment in line. One coworker said that after the two of them had a disagreement, James refused to even speak to her for months. One acquaintance had described him as having ice in his veins. Because of who James was, it made it more difficult for him to keep a job. So in the early 1970s, Leanne and James opened their own business and named it Lewis & Lewis. It was a tax service company in an abandoned part of Kansas City, Missouri. However, James seemed to prefer chasing wild side hustles over dealing with other people's finances. For example, in 1975, James and Leanne launched a company named Algae International.
Was it a lumberjack company?
It was... And they opened it with a pharmacist that was of Indian descent. So the idea there was to import pharmaceutical machines from India and sell them to the U.S. market. The same year they opened their pharmaceutical company, they moved to a house not far from one of James's tax clients, Raymond West, a 72-year-old man who spent his time gardening and reading newspaper out on his front porch. He was known to donate his used newspapers to a local florist shop, where they used his donations to wrap bouquets. He sounds like such a genuine, kind soul. Like, I just want to hug him.
Yeah.
He was unfortunately someone who went missing in July 1978. Here's where the story turns.
Missing.
All right, buckle up, guys. When police came to investigate his disappearance, James Lewis was one of the people investigators questioned. Since Lewis was West's taxman, too many S's, James had told authorities that West took a trip to the Ozarks for 3 or 4 days with his girlfriend, and Kansas City cops took his word. But later, Raymond West's best friend, Charles Banker, said that was impossible. In the 30 years they had known each other, Raymond had never once told him about a romantic relationship. 3 days after Raymond went missing, Charles and detectives broke into West's home, where there was a padlock on the door as opposed to just the normal lock that was usually there. Upon entering, everything seemed to be in order, aside from a note that was left on the coffee table that read, "Please don't disturb until after 1. Sleeping late, Raymond." Charles was immediately concerned. The letter wasn't in West's handwriting and he never referred to himself as Raymond. He always referred by Ray Ray.
This is the older gentleman, right?
This is yes.
Okay.
Yep. The one that liked reading on his porch, and yes. Except for when he signed legal documents and checks. That was the only time he would sign Raymond.
Well, yeah.
Right.
It would make sense.
Charles was very concerned and paranoid. Now, Charles is Raymond's best friend.
Yeah.
He was very concerned. But he knew that since James and Leanne had moved into West's neighborhood, James had started spending a lot of time at Raymond's home, and his story about him going on vacation with a girlfriend didn't make any sense at all. So Charles put new padlocks on the home's front door and garage door, and as Charles was on the front porch bending over changing the lock to the front door of his best friend's house, he heard a voice yelling at him and asking him what he was doing. So he turned around and saw James coming toward him with a hammer.
Oh, lovely. He got rid of the axe.
Yeah,
He was on the
he's
hammer.
upgraded.
James calmed down, but instead of leaving, he watched Charles from a parked car across the street.
So he just sat in the car and watched them?
Yeah.
That's not creepy.
Yeah.
Like, you got nothing better to do, dude? Just watch me?
No, he wasn't good at working.
Yeah, I suppose. Can you go away? Like,
Yeah.
you gonna start smoking a cigarette, too, and just awkwardly watch me? Like,
So creepy.
fuck.
All right, but Charles didn't give up on his best friend, and 21 days after his disappearance in mid-August, he became desperate for answers. So when he went to West's home and entered the house by himself at this point, as soon as he stepped inside, there was a horrible stench wafting through the house.
No, that's never a good sign.
Charles walked into the spare room where he saw some linens lying on the ground, and when he slowly started to lift the sheet with his foot, he saw dry blood and immediately called detectives. Immediately. When the cops came into the house, they too smelled the same awful stench. Charles followed detectives to the bedroom, and there they noticed an eerie stain seeping through the attic's floorboards and down the wall.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
So they took a ladder upward to the attic, where they saw a partially decomposed torso, face down, and dressed in a polo shirt. The victim had been tied up with intricately knotted rope. Their lower body severed cleanly from the hips down, with each leg wrapped in a sheet, laying on either side of the corpse.
What the fuck?
This corpse was Raymond West.
No! Not the old guy.
I know, he just sounds like so sweet.
I have a hunch it's the dude with the hammer. Like, why would he not want him to go in there that bad?
Dinner.
You know, why is he, like, freaking out that he wants to go in there?
Yeah.
So was the body there the first time he went there, too, and they just didn't notice?
Yeah, because they didn't check.
Okay.
They didn't,
So it must have been fresh, because they didn't smell anything.
It must have been.
Interesting.
Unless
Okay.
he was there later. I really don't know. They didn't say the background, but
Okay.
yeah, maybe he was moved there later. Who knows?
That's sad. It's like when a dog dies in a movie.
Oh, that's
You,
horrible. I hate
you
when
root
a dog
for the
dies.
old people and dogs.
Yeah.
It's
Like
Yeah.
I'm not, like, this is gonna sound horrible. I'm more upset when a dog dies in the movie
I know.
than a
Same.
human.
I think most people are, yeah.
Yeah, especially nowadays. Like, people are so cruel.
Yeah.
It's just sad. I was rooting for
You know?
Raymond.
Animals are just so loving and
I thought there was hope for Raymond. This is
Yeah.
sad.
yeah. This case was hard. Like, I did not see any of this coming. Like, I was completely
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
it was
is
hard.
like crazy. Like this is all tying into Tylenol.
right.
Yeah.
It's like it was a
Right.
pill. What is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it killed me not being able to tell you. Like, living with you and not being able to tell you about this case was horrible. Like, I just wanted to tell you. I'm like, I gotta tell
You
Drew. I
brought
gotta
it
tell
up
him.
every night before bed. Like, I want to tell you, but I can't tell you. It's like,
Oh, it was so aggravating. I'm happy I'm getting it off my chest now. Okay, so hanging from the rafters, there was a triple pulley game hoist. The killers must have used this to hoist the body up into the attic from the floor below. But by the time they found Raymond's body, it was so badly decomposed that they couldn't determine the cause of death.
holy crap, was up there a while then.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
three
yeah.
3 weeks had passed.
That's true.
And he had no answers about his best friend at all in those
That's
3 weeks.
sad.
Yeah, so that's why he went in
And he
there
had to be the one
himself.
to discover the body, too.
Yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
Yeah, he went up with detectives to see it. Charles Banker went to West's bank to see if West had withdrawn any funds. While he was there, the bank teller told him about a suspicious check that someone tried withdrawing from his account in the amount of $5,000. They thought the check was forgery, so the check was returned. This check was written out to James Lewis.
Yo, it's crazy how
Oh.
it's like back then you can just go to the bank and be like, I want all this information, and they'll just give it to you to where, like, I don't think they can do that nowadays.
You know,
No,
I don't know.
like-
No? Okay.
No, they can't
Like,
just
I've
do
never
that.
been in this situation. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never had a friend, like, found murdered. And
Where do you guys
yeah.
bank?
U.S. Bank
Oh,
and Chase
Okay, interesting.
in your Tri-City.
Yeah. That's just crazy that they just, like, gave him that information.
I know,
Some
isn't it?
random dude. That's my friend. Like, how do you know it's actually his friend? You
Yeah,
know?
right. Like,
Like,
a stalker or something. You
yeah,
have no
that's
idea.
just crazy that they
That
did
is
that
true.
back then.
Yeah.
Usually you need your ID to...
Yeah, you need your ID
You know,
for anything.
for a
at the
check.
bank.
Oh,
Maybe
that-
that's why. I don't know. Who
Like,
knows?
anything. Even just withdrawal, you need, like, your check. I mean, not your check, your ID.
ID.
It's just
Right,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy that they gave that to him.
Yeah, it is pretty nuts. So with this evidence, they now had probable cause to believe that James had something to do with West's death. Authorities had him sign a consent to search form, and upon their search, they came across some items in Lewis's car.
Ooh.
34 canceled checks in Raymond West's name.
34?
34 canceled checks, yep.
Oh my
crap,
god.
that's a
West's
lot.
tax return.
What?
Yeah, he had his tax return. And nylon rope with the same intricately knots that were used to hoist up West's body.
Yeah, that's not
This is pretty-
ironic,
yeah.
huh? Yeah.
Detectives were sure they caught the man behind the murder of Raymond West. A detective named David Barton, who was only 24 years old at the time, was put in charge of the investigation and started to build a case against James. When Barton talked to one of James's closest friends, she had told Barton that her .32 caliber pistol had gone missing right after James tried to purchase it from her. Additionally, Lewis's defense team revealed that he knew how to butcher livestock because James was a member of the Future Farmers of America, which certainly seems relevant
Yeah.
because Raymond's legs were chopped off very neatly, like 2 chunks of meat. A grand jury charged James with the murder. However, James claimed his innocence, and his attorney argued that the cops neglected to read him his Miranda rights. So all the
So it gets off by
incriminating
technicality.
evidence
Mm.
that was found against James in this case didn't mean diddly squat, and the case was dismissed.
So we
That's-
got off.
I hate how the legal system
Yes.
is so black and white. They're like there's
Terrible.
no like room for anything. It's just straight like if it doesn't follow the word for word by that law, like it goes against you. I
Yeah.
hate it so much.
Yeah,
It's because
That makes me
you
mad.
literally found everything points to this dude for killing this guy, but so
and he had the motive, everything.
yeah, and the motive,
Right.
but didn't read his Miranda rights. Okay, well he's not going to prison now. Like you think there would be we're gonna
Like a backup
look,
charge or
yeah,
something.
we're gonna look past that because literally all the evidence is right here.
Right.
So what if they found DNA on him or they just have
You can just
solid,
put it on him regardless.
yeah, solid proof? You're just gonna let this dude go?
Yeah, and he's
That's-
out there walking again.
God,
So it's
God,
like-
I hate that. I hate that the judicial system.
I know. It irks me too. Detective Barton kept James in his mind, especially since they were so close to putting him behind bars. So 2 years later, when Barton heard rumors that James Lewis was involved in some sort of mail fraud scheme, he jumped at his chance to finally put Lewis behind bars. Barton and his team started tailing the taxman in hopes to catch him in the act. Finally, one day on a county road in Kansas in the late 1980s, Barton and his team witnessed James take an entire mailbox and all of its contents and throw it into the trunk of his station wagon.
I'm sorry. I'm just picturing a dude wrestling a fucking mailbox out your front window, just getting pissed off and then throw it in the back of his car. I don't know. That's so funny, but it's fucking funny to me. I'm sorry.
You should. I saw the picture too. It literally was like, like those blue trash cans. I don't even know if they're trash cans, but they're like the blue. They're like a bright blue.
The recycling cans?
No, it's like they had them by the high school all the time.
Oh, yeah,
Like
yeah,
those blue.
yeah.
It's like a blue
Like
some
bin
kind of
thing.
canister thing, but but it looks like a trash can. It's huge.
Okay.
So
I hit
he-
one of those in my car in high school.
So yeah, he had that. So that was what the base was. He filled that with concrete and had a mailbox attached to a rod, and then
Okay.
the mailbox was on the top.
And that's one that he stole.
And that he made that, and he was
Oh.
having mail delivered to this place.
That's
Yeah,
weird.
it definitely isn't. So that's
Yeah.
why it's
Yeah, that's
Just
interesting.
a note on it says, throw
Please
the mail in here.
Please deliver.
It's got a little flag up on
I
the
don't know
side.
if he had its own address, to follow the other ones that were in the line.
There's
I
a
don't
$5
know.
bill slipped in there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the post office would have been yeah, no, this is not a mail.
Oh, $5? Okay, we'll do it.
Yeah, so they saw the mailbox. He threw the mailbox in his car, and it was then when Barton caught on to what he was doing. James was ordering credit cards for all his tax clients and taking them from the mailbox where he had everything being delivered to. But of course, the sneaky cockroach James was, as soon as Barton got a search warrant for James' arrest, James had fled.
Yep. That makes sense.
James and Leanne packed up their entire lives into their car and moved to Chicago.
Oh, great.
Now remember, during their time in Missouri, James went by the name of Jim Chris. So I'm just saying James to make it easier for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Because remember did I say the check was written to Jim Chris? I think I forgot to say
so.
that.
Yeah, you did.
So
not.
when they saw when his best friend went to the bank, the check was written to Jim Chris. I apologize. I said James, but it was written to Jim Chris, and that was the name he was going by at the time.
Okay.
So he's going to go by several aliases. I'm just going to try and keep it simple.
Okay.
And just refer to him by James or Lewis.
Man, for
Got
this dude not staying on task of job or something.
Yeah,
he's
he's sure good at
really
doing this.
Fucking
Yeah.
interested
Yeah.
in getting this done.
So just remember, right now he's going by Jim Chris.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah, and like I said, I just refer to him as
dude,
that to make it
if I
easier.
saw a name was on a check trying to cash Jim Chris, oh, this isn't fishy. Do you got an ID? Oh, that's right. We don't care about IDs. We're gonna get this cash for you right away.
Yeah. So and it happens more, but I do a better job of naming that. I apologize. All right. So the Lewises moved into Lincoln Park boarding house and changed their names. Goodbye, James and Leanne, or Jim. Hello, Robert and Nancy Richardson.
So they changed their last names and everything. Huh?
Everything.
Okay. And she did too.
And like I said before, James was no stranger to adopting new names to avoid
Oh
authorities.
yeah, he had literally changed his name as a child.
Right.
That one wasn't his fault. Though.
Yeah,
That was
but
his
still, that's
mom.
probably why it's so normal for him
Right,
to
yeah,
just
that's
change
true.
his name.
Exactly.
That's true.
One news report claimed James had as many as 20 different aliases.
Wow. How does he even keep that straight?
I know.
I would forget my name if it wasn't sewn on my
I
uniform.
forget my
at
own
work.
name. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, no. What side is it on? Crete? No. Oh, no. Okay. Drew. Yeah, that's right. Hey, okay.
In Chicago, the couple seemed to live a rather normal life. Leanne took to bookkeeping work at the travel agency, and James would pick her up from the bus every night after work, holding her hand the entire walk, as he would do in the morning on her way to work. James spent his time bouncing between jobs, and in between, he would read textbooks so he could impress his neighbors with lofty discussions on history, psychology, and money.
Loser.
He put on a good act, too. One neighbor said they thought James was the smartest man they'd ever met. And another neighbor spoke very highly of him, too, by saying he could talk to you about any subject and convince you no matter how much you knew, he knew more.
Oh, one of those people. A one-upper.
Well, in a way, he is smart. If he can pull this off,
Yes.
if he has that many aliases, he actually does have some sort of smart.
Yeah, imagine if he applied himself to actually something
Right,
useful.
something good, yeah.
He could have been so much better or, like, changed something in the world. Like, I don't know. That's what sucks, because I grew up with a person that was just super smart. Like, he was like a walking encyclopedia, but, like, he never applied himself. Like, I think he's doing good now. I think he's in the military now or something. So, like, he finally, like, figured his shit out. But it was, like, for the longest time, he never applied himself. Like, dude, you are so smart. Like, you could actually, like, change something in this world. I just find that, like, the people that are super smart, like, they just don't try at all.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But trouble was just around the corner, as we know. The company Leanne worked for, that was owned by Frederick McCahey, had gone under rather quickly after she had started. And as the bookkeeper, Leanne saw this coming and took a couple stamped envelopes with her as a parting gift to herself. And now we're back to where we left off in the beginning of this episode. We've made it back full circle.
Now you fucked up.
When the last paychecks had gone out, all checks had bounced. Leanne was shorted $512, but based on how James reacted, you'd think Frederick had screwed her out of her entire life savings. Even though James didn't work for Frederick, he was there with his wife and all the employees of Lakeside Travel in the legal battle. Jeez, I'm having a stroke over here. In the legal battle to recover their lost wages. But unfortunately, there was nothing to claim as the company had zero funds available to give. So no one received any compensation. James was furious.
Well, I'd be pissed too.
I get it, but
They've been stealing from everyone else.
Yeah,
so I don't feel shit for them.
like I would be upset. Yes, I work
for any normal person. Yes, I would feel bad for
yeah,
them. I don't feel bad for these
yeah,
people.
exactly.
Well, you kind of deserve it.
Yeah, this is karma, full circle.
Like, I don't know who to pay you. What's your 20...
Do you take Monopoly money?
Yeah.
Sure, you'll probably scam us anyway.
Yeah.
And I think the reason he was so mad is because him and his wife had always been on the fine line of being broke. So, I mean, that makes sense. You're banking on that money. But
hey, they worked really hard stealing that identity, okay?
Yeah, he handled money for a
props here.
living, but he was constantly stuck in the lower middle class and hated it. Perhaps that's why James was so angry. You know, he wasn't making as much as he was hoping.
Yeah, but he's trying to scam people.
I know.
I've always
it
said
is crap.
I've always said, like,
I can't feel bad for you.
If people would put the amount of time of trying to actually, like, gain clean money the way they do in scamming people, they'd be rich.
And they wouldn't have to feel bad about it either.
Yeah, because it's like they put so much thought and all this time into, like, scamming people. It's like, why don't you put that into something productive and actually make clean money? So, like, you'd be rich. You'd be so rich because you put all this time into, like, doing it the wrong way.
The thing is, too, is I feel like, too, with he was kind of dealt the shitty hands of, you know, a hand in life, being young and being gave up and everything, too. So I'm wondering, maybe, too, is that he looked at it as, well, I'm not making any money. Maybe they were right. Maybe I am useless and stuff.
Oh, I could see that fucking with him.
Yeah, I could see that making him not emotionally and mentally stable, too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's a motive. There's got to be a reason behind everyone that does the fucked up shit that they do that we talk about.
I mean, even look at Ed Gein's thing, going back to our first episode.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that he did the stuff that he did, but look at his childhood.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's like, it's crazy.
It has a lot to do with...
your upbringing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and... Yeah, so while the other employees moved on, Lewis wasn't ready to let this one go. A lawyer in the dispute claimed the couple was very adamant that McCahey was a crook and should be made to pay.
Oh, that's rich. They're calling everybody else crooks.
Right, yeah.
They've been scamming 20 other names.
Like, dude, haven't you been scamming people? Yeah, but He's a crook.
Yeah, but yours is worse, so...
I worked for that money.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, what is wrong with you? Okay, on September 6, 1982, James and Leanne fled to Manhattan and checked into the Rutledge Hotel. During their time there, they had used several aliases. Leanne got a job on September 20th, and according to James, neither of them ever returned back to Chicago. So if what James is saying is true, it'd be impossible for him to be the sole perpetrator for the Chicago Tylenol murders, since they didn't take place until the end of September 1982. So they moved there on September 6th. Leanne started a job on the 20th, and then September 1982 was, I believe, September 29th. So it doesn't line up right.
Yeah, the timing's not even.
I hope they fact check that though. I hope they just take her word for it.
Oh, yeah, it's unsolved. So it's like it's just wild that it's unsolved to me. And this was James's main reasoning as to why he couldn't have committed the Tylenol murders, because he wasn't there at the time. That he stands by that, and he stood by that until he died.
Let me guess, they didn't read the Miranda rights for him for the Tylenol.
That's right. We're supposed to just trust this guy's words.
A lot of people weren't convinced of his innocence, and they
Well,
still
I'm
are
not.
today. Yeah, I don't want to.
Would it?
I mean, I don't want to say where I stand. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
We'll get
No,
into it
not
next
yet.
episode. A former Johnson & Johnson senior executive told ABC News that many people close to the case believed that the culprit had flown into Chicago to distribute the pills at local pharmacies in the area before booking it out of town. Meanwhile, as the national news blasted warnings not to take Tylenol and how deadly it was, they insisted that James sat down and wrote the letter while shit was hitting the fan back in Chicago.
Oh, right, another scam for him.
Mm-hmm. He then placed the letter into one of Lakeside Travel's envelopes Leanne had taken from the travel agency and sent it off to Johnson & Johnson. Their theory was that James assumed the FBI would take McCahey in and name McCahey as the one responsible for these murders. While they were busy proving McCahey's guilt, they'd come across all the bounced checks to all the employees, and James would finally get Leanne's paycheck. That's what the people.
You did all this for $500?
That's what the people from Johnson & Johnson were thinking.
Oh,
That was
okay.
their theory.
I'm pissed. I'm gonna play this whole thing against Tylenol.
Yeah, for $500.
$500.
I mean, he is crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not far-fetched.
That's true. That's true.
Lewis is nuts.
You messed up my order through the drive-thru. All right, well let's.
World War IV is coming soon.
And their theory about James thinking would be correct to a certain extent. It was correct. The Tylenol task force did follow the clues. The account number and the envelope with Lakeside's travel stamp on it. They followed that. But when they raided the agency looking for a deranged killer, they realized rather quickly that McCahey had been set up. And suspicion had now fallen on James, or as McCahey knew him, Robert Richardson. On October 13th, a warrant was put out for the arrest of James.
Birthday.
Oh, yeah. Authorities weren't sure if he'd used this tragedy to frame McCahey or was the killer himself. They didn't know why it led back to this company. Regardless, they needed to bring him in for questioning. However, while authorities had a search warrant out for James's arrest, another lead came in that got investigators' attention. In October 1982, just a short distance from Paula Prince's residence, the last victim mentioned in our last episode, a warehouse worker named Roger Arnold. So this is another suspect that was brought to their attention from a phone call or whatever they had going on. They had a lot of tips and stuff being called in. But anyway, so somebody must have called him in, and he walked into a bar and was reportedly spilling all of his thoughts on the Tylenol victims to anyone in the bar that would give him the time of day. The bar's owner, Martin Sinclair, couldn't help but overhear what Arnold was saying, and it didn't sit well with him. So he phoned the police, and Arnold was later arrested for an unrelated charge. He had an aggravated assault charge from a month ago. But that didn't stop officers from interrogating him about the victims in this case. During their interrogation, they found out Roger was somewhat of an amateur chemist. He would also brag about this to bar patrons on a regular basis.
Arnold's looking sus.
Yeah, for sure. He also worked in the packaging department for a distribution center owned by Jewel Osco, the grocery chain. I don't know if you guys heard of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we
I
used to have
have.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, this is the same chain Adam Janus, one of the victims, bought the bottle of pills that killed him and the other 2 Januses.
Ooh.
He bought it from a Jewel Osco. When the cops looked through the employee list of the distribution center, they found out that the father of Mary Reiner, one of the other victims, worked with Roger. A new theory came about. Roger Arnold was the mad poisoner who swapped Tylenol for cyanide in bottles across the city of Chicago. When police got a search warrant, another breakthrough was in store. Authorities found a makeshift chemist lab spread throughout the home. Test tubes, speakers, and funnels lined the wall. There were several unlicensed firearms in the home, as well as a library filled with dangerous reading materials, including mercenary magazines and the literature about explosives and poisons. Lastly, they retrieved a plastic bag filled with a white powder substance authorities were hoping would be there. But upon testing the contents of the bag, it came back as being potassium carbonate, not cyanide, which is completely harmless and not enough for conviction. Upon questioning Arnold about all the circumstantial evidence against him, my throat, he insisted he was innocent, and without cyanide and a confession, Chicago PD had to let him go.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Right.
they didn't find anything hard enough evidence to tie him to it.
He's just a guy with a chemist
Yeah,
lab.
dude, just like
In his house.
I mean,
But he was bragging
yeah,
about
And he
that's
worked
kinda
with all the
weird.
people. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
that
Isn't
weird.
it?
I mean,
That is
he could
very
have just been a
interesting.
drunk dude at the bar at the time, like.
Maybe he wanted his 5 minutes of fame or something.
Yeah, or maybe he wanted someone to buy him a drink.
Hey,
I mean,
stranger things have
that's a shit-
happened.
Yeah, you know the Tylenol killer? Yeah, that might be me. You want to buy me a beer? Like, that's not the greatest way to get a free drink and a beer. That's like a one-way ticket to get thrown out, which did happen, so.
Yeah.
Well, kudos to the bartender for even calling the cops
Yeah,
on
right.
it.
Yeah,
I
for
give him
real.
props on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy he did. All right, in the end, the interaction with Chicago police proved to be dangerous because it sent Arnold into an extended rage, and the following year, he proved that he was more than capable of murder. In the months following Arnold's detention and questioning, he fixated on how he was treated by the cops and being perceived in the news. Arnold allegedly told the cops during his interrogation he wanted revenge on whoever called the police on him.
Oh, no.
Well, that's not.
Oh, no. I literally just said props to the bartender. This is not good.
Every time you say Arnold, I just think, hey, Arnold, the cartoon.
Yes.
The football
Yes.
player?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know why it's making me think of that, but.
Back to when times were simpler,
Yeah.
for us anyways. On June 18th, 1983, inside a bar on Lincoln Avenue, 46-year-old computer programmer John Stanisha was having a drink. Stanisha paid his bill a couple hours past midnight, and upon stepping onto the sidewalks of Windy City, a man that Stanisha had never met before pulled out a gun and shot him point blank in the chest. Unfortunately,
Jesus.
Yeah, unfortunately, Stanisha did not make it. So, after a night of drinking, Roger Arnold waited outside the bar for Martin Sinclair, the bar owner, the person who Arnold meant to shoot. If Arnold had taken a closer look, he would have realized that the man he shot was not the man he thought he was. It was Sinclair,
Yeah.
unfortunately. With enough eyewitnesses outside the bar that night, Arnold was arrested pretty quickly and sentenced to 30 years in prison. He definitely was capable of murder, so it wasn't crazy to think that he was the mad poisoner after all. It wasn't
Obviously,
crazy,
this dude
yeah.
wasn't stable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They both aren't. Yeah, they're both not stable at all. However, when it came to evidence for the Tylenol murders, police were at a dead end with Roger. He was certainly suspicious, but they had zero tangible evidence to corroborate that he was the poisoner. Arnold was released from prison after 15 years on parole and died back in 2008.
Wow.
I still can't believe he only got 30 years. That's insane.
Right, and he only did
For
15 of
manslaughter?
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not even manslaughter. That
Oh,
was
no.
point blank murder.
Yeah.
Capital
Yeah,
murder.
he didn't accidentally shoot the guy. He full blown
Yeah,
intently
30
shot him. He
years.
just shot the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think you'd get, like, life with no parole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
For
just
sure.
30
Because he had the
years.
intent.
And I'm sure there's similar cases where they have gotten that. It's
Oh,
like
for
it's
sure.
never cut and dry the
No.
same.
No.
I don't get it. With Roger Arnold proving to be innocent, investigators were holding out hope for James Lewis to be found and brought in for questioning. In between James and Leanne's move to New York and there being a warrant out for James's arrest, James decided it was about time he told Leanne about the letter he had written to Johnson & Johnson. He had never told her up until this point.
What?
Yeah.
His partner in crime here never once spilled the beans.
She had no idea this letter was even sent to Johnson & Johnson. She had no
Some
clue at all.
PIC.
God, are you sending letters out again?
Yeah, because I think he knew, oh shit, this is about to come back and bite me in the ass.
So he knew that she stole the letter, or, took the envelopes, but she had no idea that he used them.
That's the story.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's kind of...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What was the purpose of taking the envelopes then?
Well, because then she could send other letters with
They were still doing.
postage.
Yeah, they were still
Oh,
doing
that's true.
fraudy
Yeah,
scams.
that's
It
right.
could just be anything,
That's true.
It could have been paycheck fraud, anything.
She could have just innocently taken them and be like, okay, I have to, if I ever have to send anything to our family members,
Yeah,
it's paid for.
Yeah, on someone else's dime.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, okay.
But that's insane that she had no clue. I would have never thought that.
Yeah.
I thought she would have been in on everything.
Yeah, I thought she knew everything. So it's hard to say what James expected out of doing all this. Maybe he was hoping for gratitude or admiration, but instead what he had gotten was utter silence. Leanne stared at the wall mute until she finally asked James, "How could you have done such a thing?" By the end of that week, after James had spilled the beans to his loving wife, the entire nation knew both of their faces. James had taken...
Not
yeah.
good.
No.
That's not
So he
good.
told her in the nick of time, I guess, but...
So she does have a guilty conscience then, because if she's like, how could you do this? Like, obviously they didn't really care too much about the fraud, but then she's like, okay.
because it's fucking
Well,
them.
that's the thing. Is
Yeah.
she's working her butt off,
Yeah.
trying to provide for him and her, like both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing whatever the hell he does while she's at work. It's like, I get how she didn't know.
Oh, for sure,
'cause he has
yeah.
so much
And I get
spare
why
time.
she's mad, for sure.
Yeah, but she
Oh,
was
I
in on all the scams, right?
You know,
Or did
I
she
don't
turn a
think
blind
so.
eye because she loved it? I don't
Because
know.
she was mad, like, that she didn't get her check, but he was way madder. I don't think she has any guilt in this at all, honestly. I don't.
But why did she change her name?
Yeah,
Yeah, once you question that is
Yeah.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, obviously she had been in on
Something.
some part of the scam, so it's. I
But
don't
maybe
know
she
why.
didn't. Maybe she thought it was like a mild thing and didn't know how deep he was into this.
Yeah, but morals are morals. I mean, regardless.
I mean, and she
Yeah.
did know there was, like, maybe she knew he was tied to the other, like, I don't know. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
okay.
Yeah.
So if I had an idea that you were tied into the fact that you killed our neighbor, I wouldn't just sit on it
Yeah.
and hang around. Like I don't think. Like I would. Well, you might have killed someone.
So I wonder if she did know. I wonder if she
Yeah.
did know about the letter, but yeah, all my sources said she didn't.
Yeah, I don't know if she. Yeah, maybe he did lie about
No,
that.
I'm just trying to get at why would if she was in on all the scams? Why would she?
Yeah,
be
why
so,
did he hide this thing?
Well, yeah, why would
Yeah.
he hide this, and why would she be so shocked on it? Like,
That he's actually surprised. He's shittier than you thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Something's fishy, guys.
so it's like she's just putting on an act so the public doesn't go after her as much, but she's
Right.
Oh, yeah,
just
maybe.
as guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
Or maybe that was part of, like, the plea, or well, there isn't really a plea deal, but you know how they're like, okay, as long as you leave my wife out
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah. Right. Then
They're
I'll
really
own
using
up to
the
what
plea
I
deal.
did.
this is gonna
because-
sound creepy, but like we kind of know everything me and you do all the time. Like when you
Yeah.
live with someone, like
Right.
what are you doing to writing a letter for? Like,
Well, that's the thing. She worked. That's what I'm saying.
but still.
So he probably did this while she was at work.
I don't know if it's just we're weird and we know everything we do all the time.
I don't think most couples
'cause,
are like
like, we
us.
tell
I'm
each
gonna
I
be
other-
also
honest.
I know what both of you guys are doing all the time too.
Because we tell all of
Yeah.
us, like we tell like what we're doing all the time.
What
so,
are you doing? Oh, just in the bathroom.
Yeah. Like everything. I tell you, we like all our moves during the
Yeah,
day.
it's
We
true.
like I don't know.
We all
it's just
keep tabs
weird.
on each other. It's not a
Yeah.
bad thing, though.
No, it's not at all.
Yeah.
It's
We're
just weird
We've
that
all got each other's
So
back, so if
don't
something
commit any
happens.
tax fraud, guys. I know
Yeah,
you'll be
so I
legit.
won't.
What are you doing? Tax fraud?
Oh,
No
typical
thanks.
Tuesday
Yeah,
for
just,
Drew.
you're just doing some tax fraud. It's not weird.
And I know nothing about it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. You write letters again? No, I don't know anything about that.
All right, so James had taken the feelings of resentment from his wife, and now they both were about to suffer for his wrongdoings. Since early September, James Lewis had gone undetected and was living in a low-cost hotel in Manhattan, and by mid-October, photos of James and Leanne were broadcasted nationwide with their aliases Robert and Nancy Richardson.
You know, the news were like, yo, fuck these people. hardcore, dude.
For real. The news coverage of their story was just as intense, if not more, than the news coverage of JFK's assassination.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's pretty big because that was huge when it happened.
Yes.
That was fucking crazy.
Yeah, so it was.
You ever looked at, like, okay,
Very
this
well.
is totally, I won't get into it. You ever looked into the JFK assassination? Like, all the conspiracy
Oh,
theories
yeah, there's some
behind it?
serious
Like,
conspiracies.
yeah, it's fucking, like, it's a rabbit hole. Like,
Oh,
if you
boy.
want to kill,
I have not.
like, if you don't want to sleep one night and just, like, go down a rabbit hole on, like, YouTube, like, yeah, look into that. That shit's crazy.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, it's fucking
probably
nuts.
You're like, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, like, you nerd, whatever. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. But that's crazy that,
I know.
Holy shit.
It was big news. So, yeah. And actually, when Mom and Dad, or just Mom, Dad doesn't listen to us, but Mom listened to our
Typical.
last episode, and she's like, I do remember now. And my grandparents also do remember as well. So it's like, that makes sense. I was right in saying they would remember this.
The parts guy at work,
Yeah.
I was talking to him about this because he listens to us. And he's like, I remember that too now. He goes, I completely forgot about it until I listened to it and thought about it. Yeah. He goes, I remember that happening. He goes, I remember seeing it on the news.
Yeah, I'm happy people do remember, and yeah, because this should not be forgotten. But yeah, with all the news coverage being this well documented, staying hidden was going to prove to be even harder for these two.
Hey, you're that Tylenol asshole! Walking down the street.
Right, call it in immediately.
That's an asshole that fucked with the Tylenol!
So 2 weeks after the Chicago Tylenol murders, one of the hotel owners confronted James in a lobby and had told him that he looked oddly familiar.
I should just go get the fuck out.
Yeah, and he questioned whether or not he had been a previous tenant in another building.
Okay.
The Lewis family didn't stick around at that hotel anymore after that, in fear there might be another close call.
Shit, we gotta leave again.
Yeah.
We gotta move again.
The fugitive couple then changed their aliases to Edward and Carol Scott and escaped to an even more rundown hotel in the same area.
Fuck, what, they on like 30 now? Like,
I know. Cockroaches seeped from the corners of their new space. So, like,
Ooh,
I
love
couldn't
it.
imagine living in
Yum.
I can just see them like, alright, what's our name's gonna be now? And they have like a dice and they just roll it and like whatever number it lands on, it's going to like a graph and it's like, alright.
No, Dave, we used that one
Yeah,
last
like
week.
a redneck life.
Back to the drawing board. We already used this one.
Like redneck life. That's hilarious. All right. A few days after their move, one of Leanne's coworkers recognized her from the news and called the NYPD. So now the task force knew the couple was residing in New York. A total of 100 cops and FBI agents descended onto Manhattan's streets, and the Lewises still remained hidden. As far as authorities were concerned, the couple was gone. Back in Kansas City, Missouri, Detective Dave Barton, if you remember him from earlier this episode, was sitting in his living room watching the evening news when a picture of James popped up on the screen. Do you remember Barton? He was the detective.
Okay.
Yeah, the young
In
one,
Missouri.
right?
Yeah, the young one, 24.
For West murder, yeah.
Okay.
So he saw him on the news, and he was like, this guy, I know this guy.
No, this is a lot of work to be like, nah, we didn't do it. Like, to be hiding and...
Yeah,
like,
I know.
like,
But
nah.
it worked, though, because he didn't,
Yeah.
he didn't,
Yeah.
like, he
Nah,
never
we didn't do
got
it. We just
charged with
moved
this.
5 times in the last month.
And changed your
And
name 30
changed-
times.
Yeah. Nah, we didn't do it. No.
So Barton was sitting in his living room watching the evening news when a picture of James popped up on the screen. After Barton saw his photo, he began following this case like his life depended on it.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
too. if I were
Barton
them.
sent over all the evidence he had from the murder of Raymond West over to Chicago PD. He offered up the hoist pulley from the attic, which had a smudge fingerprint on it as well.
Ooh.
As it turned out, the fingerprint was a match to the partial fingerprint on the letter written to Johnson & Johnson.
Spicy.
And what's even more damning than that, the two prints that now matched with each other were also a match to James Lewis.
Ooh.
And that is where we're going to end episode 2.
Oh, what the...
Okay, wait a second.
I know, how is it unsolved? We're going to talk
Yeah,
about...
but for
we're
real.
We're going to finish this up next week. We're going to talk about conspiracy theories. We're going to put our thoughts and opinions on the table. Like, it's going to be crazy.
I'm going to be up for 3 days.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, but for like they have all this in front of them, and it's like I just can't believe it's unsolved.
I know, and
like,
a lot of like the people that were involved in this case, detectives, like even innocent bystanders, they think that's the guy.
You know what it is? The government. They didn't want it to get out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, but there's got to be an underlying reason why it never got solved, because it's like thrown in their lap. It's
well, the
pretty
thing
much
is,
thrown
they're
in
still
their,
working on it now today. Like, they're trying to use, like, DNA.
And he's deceased already, right?
He is dead, yeah.
Okay.
I think he died last year.
And Arnold's dead too?
Arnold died in 2008. Yes.
So, I mean, they still technically, even if they do...
They're trying to
They could
do
still
DNA
use him.
stuff,
Yeah, they could still say he is
and
the
like
one that
use,
did it,
like,
but nothing's going to come from
relatives,
yeah,
maybe that'll
but they won't.
hit, like,
they
make
won't
a
do
hit.
that though. They won't just say like he did it without it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can't do anything. He's
Yeah.
dead, so they can't press charges
But
on him.
it'd be nice
They can
for
just,
the
but
families
it'd be closure.
to know.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
closure.
And a lot of them are getting older. Like, this was 40 years ago.
That is crazy to think that the 80s was 40 years ago.
I know.
Like, it doesn't seem right. Like, the 80s.
No, it should be like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys do that? Where you're like, oh,
All the time.
like,
Yes.
oh, 2005. Oh, that was only like 10 years ago. It's like,
Yeah.
no, a lot longer than that. Like,
Almost 20 years ago, right?
Jeez.
I know.
Yeah.
I can't believe how old we're all getting. Like, our parents, our family. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, so this case was absolutely cuckoo bananas bonkers, Batman.
I was not expecting that to come out.
I wasn't
out of
either.
this
That's why I'm
case.
like, I have to tell you, and I couldn't, and it hurt.
The whole time I was just thinking, say what?
Yes,
Like, this
for
whole
real.
thing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Isn't it
bizarre.
crazy?
That's wild.
Are you sure we can't just go into part 3 right this second?
I am 100% sure. I don't have it wrapped up yet. So I had zero idea I was going to want to split this one into as many parts as I have. Please, please, please come back next week as we wrap this case up. Because my goodness gracious, I researched my booty hole off on this one. I never thought I'd be so passionately sad to see this one end.
Booty hole.
Even more so knowing that this case is unsolved. But next week, we're going to finish this one off and then spend some time talking about the conspiracy theories and sharing our thoughts. So it should be interesting, to say the least. But, all right, ghoulies, it's a Gouda day to have a Gouda day. Until next time.
Peace out.
Bye!